Today we're stepping into a very dangerous Pokemon game called Pokemon Ambrosia. But why is it dangerous, you may ask? Well, in this Pokemon universe, Wallace has taken control of the Hoenn region and is going to be invading the Kanto and Johto regions. So it's time for you to prepare yourself as a new trainer for an all-out war. A task that might be very hard for a 12-year-old boy, but I believe that we can save the world. It also gives a ton of quality of life improvements and updates to the base version of Crystal, like an updated map with new areas for you to explore, and it also gives you more freedom as you're allowed to go to the Kanto region whenever you reach Goldenrod. There's also Pokemon up until Generation 6 which you are going to want to see in this art style. Physical Special Split is also implemented with about a dozen other features in there as well. But you're going to have to find out what all of those are by saving the world together with me. So let's jump right into Pokemon Ambrosia. The game starts off very dark with Wallace, the champion of the Hoenn region, taking out people for treason with his Rayquaza's Draco Meteor. He then says that the land will be liberated by Hoenn and that the Johto region has nothing to worry about because the Kanto region is the one he's after. However, if the people of Johto decide to sympathize with Kanto, they will not be spared. After all of that is over, we hear a voice in our heads saying that
all of this was just a nightmare.
And this voice belongs to my father, who unfortunately left me and my mother so that he could try and protect us from any incoming danger. But just before he left, he did say that I was his kid, which meant I was powerful and strong, but also capable of many great things. Everything then becomes blurry and we wake up in our own bed. After heading downstairs and talking to our mother, who hands me a very useful Pokegear that I can use to call her, but also to navigate the region. On top of this, we also get a free escape pod that basically works as an unlimited escape rope. And lastly, we also get a motherly kiss on the cheek before we are headed off for our very first Pokemon in Professor Elm's lab. But he isn't the only one in here, as he introduces me to Cynthia, the champion of the Sinnoh region. She envies me for being able to start my own Pokemon journey, and if she could, she would do it all over again herself, because the region definitely needs a ton of good Pokemon trainers to protect them in these fractious times. We also learn that the old leader of Hoenn, Steven Stone, is still alive somewhere. There are rumors that Wallace executed him, but with the help of Professor Elm, we might know that he's still alive and kicking. This would be great because he still has a ton of followers in Hoenn that are not supporting what Wallace is doing, and if we could find him, we could mark a turning point in the ongoing war. After taking that information in, we get to choose between 3 starter Pokemon: Froakie, Chimchar, and Trico. All 3 of these are great choices, but I went with the Water Frog, who just like a ninja will execute any opponent that might be in our way. As I try to leave the lab, one of the scientists comes up to me and tells me that Professor Oak is working on a weapon to try and win this war. Unfortunately for us, we have no idea when this weapon will be ready, so we have to prepare ourselves for any future feuds. He gives me a rare candy box which will make leveling up my Pokemon a ton easier, but we also get a pocket PC to easily swap our team around and heal them on the go. With all of this information absorbed, I try to leave town on my life-changing journey, but we get stopped by a local friend of ours named Crystal. She also got her first Pokemon and wants to become a strong trainer too. And if we're going to try and save the world, we need all the help we can get, so we decide to battle her so we can both become stronger. She only had a Riolu that kept on spamming counter, and because we only had Pound as our attacking move, I first had to set up 6 smoke screens. This made her miss nearly every single one of her moves, so we could easily finish it off, and boom, our first win is already in the pocket. We say our goodbyes and head to a new area just above town where we get the Repulsor, basically an infinite repel. Because there's now a bridge to the right side, we can also straight up head to Kanto, but I was way too underleveled for this, as the first Pokemon I ran into was a Heracross. This level 46 Beetle sent me back to the trenches, so I moved my ass to round 1 instead. That's where we see that wild Pokemon can not only be encountered in the grass, but also in the overworld. They might all have the same sprite, but they have different colors to indicate how strong they are. For example, gold Pokemon are mostly shiny, and red ones are high level. An amazing feature that I really loved, but what I didn't love was running into a shiny Pokemon on the first round without having access to Pokeballs, so I had to kill it. But don't worry, because these gold shiny overworld Pokemon have a 1 in 8 chance to spawn, making it incredibly easy for you to run through the game with a full shiny squad. So of course, I'll be trying to get as many as possible for myself too. After arriving in Cherry Grove, we get a quick tour from an old man and learn that there are some different spots for us to check out, like a new NPC called the Role-Playing Master who will follow you around town to town, challenging you to role-playing games of your favorite franchises like Star Wars, Yu-Gi-Oh, and so many more. In this first one, you actually play as Star Wars characters. I mean, your Pokemon are named after them, and then he will tell you the entire story depending on the outcome of the battles. A very cool feature that will reward you with an item after you complete the entire storyline. So I became Luke Skywalker, defeated the Sith, and got a muscle band as my reward. With it, I decided to check out the rest of the special areas and found a guy standing inside of a flower field waiting for someone to bring him the red eye orb. We can find it somewhere in a dark cave, so we're going to look for it later, but first we need to get bullied by a rich kid. Literally. This guy got himself an Arcanine from his rich dad and is beating up the entire neighborhood with it, including me because I can't beat it yet. So as our punishment, he calls me a peasant, forcing us to leave town, but you bet we'll be back one day to get our revenge. Just you wait, rich kid Julius, my wrath will be unfathomable. But on to our main quest, which is going to Professor Pokemon's house. He just spent 6 months as a spy in the Hoenn region and smuggled a special mystery egg out of there. He believes it contains a fairy-type Pokemon which will help us in our cause to defeating the Hoenn Admiral Drake and his dragon types. Professor Oak is also here. He wants to help me become the strongest version of myself possible by handing me a Pokédex and a device that nobody else has called the EXP Share, a device that helps trainers reach their potential way faster. After telling me some encouraging words and saying that he believes in me, he finally heads off, and Mr. Pokemon also hands me one more device, the Remember All, which lets me remember all of my Pokemon's moves in case I want to switch around their movesets. We head back outside and get a call from Elm, who says that somebody has broken into his lab as he's trying to fight him off at this very moment and needs my help. So we head out, but on the way there we run into a red-haired kid. He's super aggressive and immediately throws out his Trico, a Pokemon that should normally win the matchup against my Froakie, but because he doesn't have any grass-type moves, we come out on top after spamming Quick Attack. After his loss, he says he's going to be the greatest Pokemon trainer ever and urges me to stay out of his way. When we finally make it to the lab, we find out from the police that the boy we just fought is the guy who stole one of the Pokemon here. His name is Shatter, and if we ever run into him again, we need to send him over to the police station. Once the officer leaves, however, we hand the egg to Professor Elm, who's ecstatic to see it and is immediately going to start researching it. In the meantime, he wants me to go and take on the gym challenge and become champion so we have more power and can try to fight back against Hoenn. But this will be a long, tedious, and hard road, but he knows that with our talent, we'll be able to achieve it and save the world. As I then try to leave the lab, we get some Pokeballs from one of his assistants and learn that level caps have been implemented from this point forward. This opened up a ton of routes for us, so I tried to hit the Blackthorn, but got my ass beaten by a hiker with a level 50-something Tyranitar. So I knew I was out of my league there, but I did find a shiny Pokemon named Dratini, a beautiful green little snake that I immediately added to my team. Shortly after, I run into a guy that teaches me the concept of invaders. These are red trainers that are scattered over the entire region and are trying to make your life harder by having incredibly unbalanced teams. And these are clearly a reference to invaders of Elden Ring, which basically means you can invade other people's worlds and kind of battle them and make their lives a living hell. So I left them alone for now and headed straight to Violet City. I try to go straight for the gym, but my own thoughts start working against me as my mind tries to tell me that I'm not strong enough, that I wasn't able to take down Shatter, while Professor Elm was counting on me, and that I should head back home and totally leave this journey alone. But we're strong and can overcome ourselves, literally, as we have to battle our own team, with Froakie taking on Froakie and Dratini taking on Dratini. Overcoming this mental struggle made us way stronger and more confident, but not confident enough to head into the gym yet, so I decided to check out the local Sprout Tower. We learned that there's a new basement around here as well, but one of the monks has gone down there and has been missing for days. We're not allowed entry ourselves until we can use the HM for Flash, which means we have to complete the Sprout Tower and the first gym after we can go in there. So I went ahead and defeated as many bald people that came in my path as possible and evolved my Froakie into a Frogadier. I then finally finally grew the balls to confront one of these invaders and learned that he had an Aerodactyl with Dragon Rage. A very overpowered move so early into the game, but with Frogadier I was able to defeat him and farm some money. After this, I went back to the top of Sprout Tower where we find a shiny Bellsprout that I immediately captured with one of my newly grown balls. But it didn't stop there, as I also found a shiny Pikachu to add to the team. With these upgrades, I finally stood face to face with the biggest bald man ever. He would give me the HM for Flash if we'd managed to beat him, so I threw out my Frogadier against his Litwick and extinguished it with a water gun. For his next Pokemon Bellsprout, I threw out Dratini and used Thunder Wave to paralyze it and Leer to lower its defense. My own Bellsprout then chips it down with an acid so Frogadier can finish it off with a quick attack after this. His last Pokemon is an Espion, and that is also getting washed away after I sprayed with more water. We get flashed and boom, suddenly we're standing in front of Faulkner, who reads me a haiku, something I'm absolutely not interested in, so I throw out Frogadier and boom, his ass is cooked. His Frogadier destroys Staravia and Pikachu shocks Noctowl. This gives me my first gym badge, and now we can flash rooms ourselves. So I head back to Sprout Tower but run into a stray cat on the street. This turned out to be a shiny Meowth, so I immediately added it to the Dex total. With it, I was able to light up the entire basement, which allowed one of the monks to escape and give me a shadow tag as his reward. But there was more to this area than I expected, as it led outside eventually. That's where we found a hidden garden filled with immensely strong Pokemon like Garchomp, Gengar, and even the mythical Pokemon Genesect. All of these were level 60 and above, so I wasn't going to mess with them. So almost every single step I took, I had to make a safe state so I could try to get to the end of the garden. After a lot of resets, we finally reached it and found Ambrosia, a special medicine that makes your Pokemon immensely strong. If you give it to them, they gain max happiness and all of their stats get maxed as well. So I'm definitely going to keep this around until I find the Pokemon that I want to use it on. With Flash, I could also finally explore the Dark Cave where we found the Red-Eyed Orb, but also two more shiny Pokemon to add to my team. Those were Larvitar and Zubat. I head back to the man in the flower field who says the orb can be used against invaders to get double money, but if you lose, they get all of yours. A nice trick to get some extra money if you need it, but we are going to take the Life Orb he gives as well. I go back to Julius and ruin his day by defeating his Arcanine easily. This makes him feel very small, and finally he starts apologizing to the people he started to look down on in the first place. So in the end, you always know that money doesn't buy you everything. With that life wisdom out of the way, I went back to the Union Cave, or at least I tried to, but ended up being stopped by our friend Crystal. She believes that Violet City is just surrounded by dark energy, with the Dark Cave, the basement, and the ruins of Alph all surrounding it. However, there was something else that bothered her, a red-haired guy that seemed to hate everyone, even his own Pokemon. After witnessing all of these weird things, she really wants to leave Violet City behind, but wants to know if she's strong enough to do that by defeating me in a Pokemon battle. Well, I'm going to tell her right now that that is not going to be possible, but she can try. She has now added a Dratini of her own to the team, but this thing was only able to take down my Frogadier because it got paralyzed by a Thunder Wave. After this, my Meowth was able to bite it a couple of times so that we could move on to Riolu, who stood no chance against Bellsprout and his Sleep Powders and Razor Leaves. With that, my Bellsprout got enough experience to evolve into Weepinbell. We say goodbye to Crystal and head into Union Cave. Nothing all that eventful happened inside there, so I made it out easily and captured a new shiny Pokemon on the route after that, a Machop. We all know his evolution line looks like the Hulk, so he's going to help me smash through the competition. The first competition that I ended up fighting was Team Rocket blocking off the Slowpoke well in Azalea Town. We learned from Kurt that they're a special group from Kanto that specialize in smuggling Pokemon, that we can't let this scum roam free, so we're going to try and shut them down together. But when we got down there, we ended up being all alone because Kurt broke his back. Their boss quickly told me to scram after throwing out his Slowking, but we weren't scared as Weepinbell dealt with it easily. With their Operation Dismantle, we learned that they're here for a special reason. They're looking for ways to win the Hoenn War, as their scientists are interested in Slowpoke, all because of something in their brainwave patterns. That's all he knows. But they've already gathered enough data, so they leave and Kurt thanks me for the help. We bring him to the hospital, go back to town, and learn that once again, the role-playing guy is here. This time, we easily defeated his Yu-Gi-Oh! Team puzzle and grabbed the Wise Glasses as our reward. With these, our special attacks will hit even harder against the upcoming gym leader, Buxie. She has two Pokemon, the first one being being a Scyther, a very easy target for my Pikachu's Thunder Wave. After this, he kept on getting paralyzed so we could easily take him down. I also paralyzed the incoming Heracross before Pikachu finally bit the dust. This allowed my Weeping Bell to come in and hit 3 more sludges to gain me my second gym badge. But this isn't the final thing we do in Azalea, as we end up running into Shatter again. We learn that he absolutely despises Team Rocket and thinks they're weaklings, just like me, so we have to prove him wrong. He now has a Larvitar of his own that's faster than mine and ends up beating the matchup. But the rest of the battle was straightforward as we knocked out Gible, Grovyle, and Drillbur with Razor Leaves and Sludges. After losing, he says that we've already reached our peak and that he's going to go past us the next time we meet, but I highly doubt that. But that's not something we have to focus on. The war is all that matters. So with a dedicated mind, I make it through Ilex Forest and Route 34 to reach Goldenrod City, where our next focus was easy: take down the next gym leader and get out of there as fast as possible. So I started evolving all of my team members like Dragonair, Pupitar, Machoke, Victreebel, Crobat, and everything else we had left. When we were eventually fully prepared, I headed over to Whitney, who's ready to roll over me with her Miltank. She also somewhat shifted her focus from normal types to fairy types, but that mattered little to me, because my Raichu won the matchup against her Gardevoir. I just used Thunder Wave and spammed Crunches. Yes, I might only be left with 1 HP, but that's more than enough to also paralyze the incoming Miltank, which immediately cured it with its berry and took me down. No problem, we still have more Pokemon in the back, with Persian and Pupitar combining their powers to do decent damage just for it to use Milk Drink and heal up. That was the signal for me to bring out the big guns, with Victreebel using Sludge Bomb to take it and the final Pokemon Togekiss down. This causes Whitney to lash out, saying that I'm a brute, but she then realizes that she is a strong and capable woman and hands me the Star Badge anyway. Which is a good thing, because in this war we're going to need as many strong people as possible. Women, men, and Pokemon alike. This increased the level cap yet again so we could evolve Frogadier into Greninja. I then stumbled upon a legendary champion named Leon. He came from the Galar region all the way to this place to help out Johto and Kanto in their pursuit against the Hoenn army. He took one quick look at me and saw that I also wanted to become a strong trainer like him, so he gave me a battle, totally whooped my ass, and gave me some advice at becoming better. With his wise words lingering in my mind, I hit the road again and ran into a girl with some very suspicious thoughts. You see, there's a man up ahead blocking the road, but he's not talking and is giving off a very weird aura. So she thinks he's possessed by a demon. Luckily for us, her sister has some holy water, so we go and pick it up, spray it on the guy, and it turns out that she was right because he turned into a shiny Spiritomb. One of the Pokemon that might look the coolest, but is definitely not great when you try to use it in battle. I still captured it anyway, which opened up the path for Crystal to come give me a hug because he was blocked in by him. The reason she didn't take him on herself is because she's absolutely afraid of ghost-type Pokemon because she got burned by a Litwick as a kid. But she's trying to overcome that fear by becoming a Pokemon trainer and yet again wants to test her skills against me. She now has a Porygon 2, which is easily dealt with Machamp's Drain Punch. Greninja and his Bubble Beams make quick work of Larvesta, Machamp comes back out to deal with Dragonair, and her final Pokemon Lucario also stands no chance. After our win, we learned that up ahead is the Haunted Forest, which is a place she didn't want to go into. But after our battle, she has gained the courage to do so, so you're welcome, Crystal. Me, I'm not afraid of no ghosts in no forest, so you already guessed it, after 5 minutes we already made it out of there and reached Ekritik. That's where I went to the local dance club to beat up all the Kimono girls and gain the HM for Surf as our reward. We unfortunately can't use it until we get our next gym badge, however, so we go to one of the local monuments, the Burn Tower, where we not only meet the Suicune simp you've seen, but also our rival. He's here to try and capture a legendary Pokemon for himself and wants me out so we can't snatch it from under his nose. So he tries to make me leave with yet another battle. Little did he know that my Machamp, Greninja, and Victreebel were going to say something different about that. Yes, he might have some scary Pokemon too, like Gabite, Scizor, Sceptile, Excadrill, and Pupitar, but none of those could stand up to my power level. But our battle shook the entire tower, which caused me to fall through the floor. After breaking our legs, we come eye to eye with the 3 legendary beasts who heal me up and send me outside so we can go and challenge Morty. He was ready to haunt my dreams with his ghost Pokemon, but but we were not scared. Until he threw out his washing machine and demanded that I do the laundry. Yeah, that was not happening, so I broke his machine with Victory Bell. After finding out, he tried to drop a chandelier on my head, but my Greninja was easily able to deal with it after spamming Dark Balls. He then tried to cut me down with his Sword and Shield, but with Pupitar's Earthquake and Raichu's Thunderbolts, we could easily rust it down and move on to the final Pokemon, Gengar. He might look scary, but my Raichu's teeth are sharper and even scarier, so after we eat him up, we gain the Fog Badge. With that, I moved on to the next round where we saw another shiny overworld Pokemon. This time, it turned out to be a Beldum, a Pokemon that I know everybody loves the shiny of. And because Metagross is also so awesome, I just didn't have a choice but to capture it. When I moved on from this, I ran into a couple of weird trainers with Pokemon that had actual names like Mindy the Whimsicott, Cindy the Blissey, and Sandy the Gardevoir. I'm sure this is a reference to something, but I have no idea what. So I moved on to Olivine City, where we had a showdown between Shatter and Crystal. Crystal absolutely despises Shatter because he stole the Pokemon from the lab and never decided to give it back. So she's going to teach him a lesson right outside of town. I don't want to be mixed up in that drama, so I head to the lighthouse where Yasmin expects me to pick up some medicine from Cyanwood's shop. So that's where we'll be going next, but first I pick up my HM for strength, then use my other HM Surf to reach the place. I crush Yusin's dreams of ever getting a Suicune by destroying him in front of the Pokemon, pick up the secret potion from the local shop, and evolve my Metang into Metagross. And with him, I went to challenge the local gym leader Chuck, who was trying to chuck a boulder at my head. So as a counter, I used my Victory Bell's Sludge Bombs to immediately take care of his Breloom. Crobat's Brave Birds and Metagross's Bullet Punches deal with Gallade, a Mach Punch from my Machamp combined with a Raichu's Thunderbolt screws over Lucario, and the final two Gym Bros, Machamp and Conkeldurr, get disintegrated by some Psychics. This gets us our free Fly HM, but we're not done here yet, because just when I was about to leave this beautiful city, a little girl came up to me. She tells me she's a psychic kid back from Saffron City in Kanto. She needs my help because her dad is in danger, as a Hoenn spy has been spotted nearby and she wants me to take him down. After complying, she tells her Abra to teleport us to a nearby lighthouse. That's where I see a sailor saying that we need to move along because he's waiting for his ship to arrive, but we can see from his facial expression that he's disgusted by even looking at us. So the girl uses his psychic powers to read his mind, and we learn that he's here to eliminate us, which blows his cover. He goes on to introduce himself as a captain of the Hoenn fleet who directly reports to Admiral Drake, which means he's one of the strongest Pokemon trainers around right now. And he's going to use that to his advantage by beating me in a battle, which he does easily because his Pokemon are so much higher level than mine. It doesn't matter though, because this little girl has a psychic friend named Mewtwo who saves the day by taking down the captain and his Pokemon all together. He also snaps this captain out of existence, which means the Johto region is safe for yet another day. The little girl then thanks me for my help and teleports me back to the lighthouse where we give our secret potion to Jasmine. This heals up Ampharos so her light can yet again be used to guide incoming ships from other regions that would want to help us. She's super grateful and thanks me by giving me a battle down at her gym, but first I evolved my Pupitar into Tyranitar before I took her on. I want to say this battle was a breeze, but it turned out to be harder than I expected. Machamp did start off by taking out a good chunk of Ferrothorn's health. She then swapped into her Skarmory, which was an easy two-shot as well with Drain Punch, but Klefki was a hard wall for me, so I swapped down into my Metagross to deal with it after using a Meteor Mash. Greninja used his Hydro Pump to destroy Steelix, and Machamp came back out to deal with Ferrothorn. However, Magnezone was able to paralyze me and kill me with a couple of Zap Cannons, so we only had one thing left to do, and it was using Tyranitar's Earthquake to end off the battle and gave me the Mineral Badge. With the level cap increased, I evolved my Dragonair into a Dragonite and headed over to the Lake of Rage, where the red Gyarados wasn't the only thing that was red. We also beat up an invader and in the end met up with a champion named Lance. He says this red Gyarados was a product made of the evil Team Rocket. Rocket. So he's going to try and put a stop to their antics so that no other people or Pokemon get hurt. He wants my help to try and take them down, but unfortunately my mental self got the better of me, which made me lose faith in who I was. But then I remember I'm not doing this for myself. I'm doing this to end the war, save the people, and find my dad. He could be behind this door for whatever I know. So I picked myself up and entered that building without a second thought. That's where I see Lance interrogating some of the people around here, but eventually they do give up the location of their hideout. After the secret entrance opens up, we start our assault, defeating grunts, getting passwords to special doors, and we even run into Shatter, who got his ass beat by Lance, which kind of woke him up from a struggle that he's had with himself for quite some time. Why does he hate everyone? And now that he's in this self-conflict, it's going to take a while before he's back to his old self, or maybe even becomes a better person. So we wish him luck with his self-healing journey and go up to an executive that has the password to the door that can shut this entire organization down. It also happens to be the same guy we met at Slowpoke Well, and their whole experiment with their brainwaves has been going very well too. And he's not going to let me tamper with him or his ambitions any longer. So he tries to come at me with a Pokemon battle, but that is over rather quickly as his team is absolutely garbage. After he runs off, we get the passwords from a random bird and open up the generator room. But just before we can enter, we get stopped by two other executives who are trying to end my life. In that moment, we hear a voice down the hallway screaming,
"Leave my kid alone,"
as my dad runs onto the scene. He apologizes for leaving me and my mom and says that I have grown up quite a bit since last time we saw him. But he's not going to let the evils of the world hurt his family any longer, so we're going to fight side by side. But we end up being a very weak duo, our chemistry isn't working, and we end up losing both of our battles. Dad then jumps in front of me and asks Team Rocket to leave us alone, but they think this is absolutely pathetic, so they're going to take both of us out. Luckily, in that moment, we hear a man screaming from down the hallway again,
"Dragonite use outrage."
It's Lance who saves the day, and we command his Dragonite together with him to take both of the members out. One of them runs off and my dad decides to chase them down, so this leaves just me and Lance to clean up the generators by taking on the electrodes that are guarding them and powering them. Once they're taken care of, we end up getting the Whirlpool HM, but before we can use it, we need to get our next gym badge from the Old Man Price. So our path to becoming a Pokemon champion continues, and we're not going to let some ice types get in the way of that. Plus, we do have a lot of Pokemon that are good against ice types, so Metagross, Machamp, Tyranitar, and Raichu definitely carried this battle. So we step out of that building with our Glacier badge in hand and get a call from Elm saying that the radio tower is under attack by Team Rocket and that we're the only one that can help. Don't ask me what happened to the authorities of the Johto region, but I guess I'm a one-man team. Luckily, we got a little bit of backup once we arrived there, as Crystal was also called up. But instead of helping me out throughout the entire tower, she decides to battle me in the lobby. Not the best idea because I wiped the floor with her yet again, which means she has to go back to the Pokemon Center and is going to check out the underground after that. So while she's busy poking around there, we're going to take on this entire tower by ourselves. In the end, we end up eye to eye with a fake radio director that attacks me with a full-on poison type team. Once we come out victorious, we learn that Team Rocket is trying to take down Hoenn with a special weapon here in the tower. Their first idea was to try and use Mewtwo to take down the Hoenn army, but he escaped, and this is their second plan. And if you want to try and save the actual radio director, we're going to have to go to the underground ourselves. So we snatch a card key and head down there. We run into Shatter, who's also looking for the radio director, and says that we need to get out of his way because otherwise we are going to get hurt. Not by him, by the way, but by the actual Team Rocket members, which means he actually cares about us now. This battle was over quickly though because I just set up one bulk up with my Machamp and sweep through everything he could throw at me. This made him realize we're the right person to try and save the radio director, so he lets me go so we can save the day. Once we find him, he hands me a card key so we can get to the upper floors of the tower, and he says that we shouldn't worry about him because he's going to be able to get out of here once we get the cuffs off of him. But this is a big moment for me and my thoughts start to overwhelm me again. I mean, we could have gotten killed if Lance didn't show up back at the Rocket hideout, and that is something that's very scary, but I realize that with every step I take, I become stronger. So we drown out all of those bad thoughts and beat ourselves in yet another battle to gain the courage to confront both of the executives at the top of Radio Tower. One of them immediately starts mocking me, saying,
"Where's your daddy? Because I would love to see him begging for your life again."
But we all know that actions speak way harder than words. And with our pent-up rage, her team gets gets disintegrated. And that was just in time because they have created a very special brainwave that they're going to broadcast to the Hoenn region to make their 3 legendary Pokemon that are commanded by Wallace turn against him. Not a bad idea if you ask me, but unfortunately all the other Pokemon in the region and around here are going to be affected as well, and we can't let chaos break out. So we end up taking out Archer's Bisharp, Tyranitar, and Houndoom and destroy the radio system before it can broadcast the message. But this won't be the last we see of Team Rocket, as they've dispatched their best team member and executive down in Kanto named La Primera, and he's going to carry out their mission there. That's something we can't really do anything about ourselves until we get to Kanto, but at least the Johto region is safe. As a reward, we can now go to Blackthorn City to challenge the final gym leader, but we also get the Rainbow Wing in case I want to get Ho-Oh. But I feel like my team can absolutely get anything done already, so I left the legendary bird alone and went to an ice cave instead. After sliding through some of the puzzles and picking up the HM for Waterfall, our next destination was in sight, Claire's gym. She's super prepared for the war and is ready to see any opponent perish before her eyes. But that doesn't make her unbeatable. Yes, she might start off with a majestic Milotic, but all you need to take that down is a Machamp with a critical hit Drain Punch and a bulk up setup. On the next Pokemon Gyarados, I swap in my Dragonite and set up 2 Dragon Dances. From there on, we can just use Dragon Claws to sweep the rest of her team. Even her Latias didn't stand a chance. But even though she lost, she doesn't deem me worthy of a gym badge. I need to go to the Dragon's Den to get some knowledge so that we can be fully prepared to become the new champion. So that's what we do. We head over there, we answer a couple of basic Dragon-type Pokemon questions, and learn that we have a decision to make if we do become champion, which would be fighting in the war or leaving it alone. But I think we all know what we're going to pick. Now that we know what awaits us, we head out and go to Victory Road. On our way there, we met up with Crystal, who's very stressed about being on the front lines against the Hoenn army. She just wants us to have fun and not risk our lives, which I totally understand, but she also knows that this is for the best of the world. But she needs to know if she's prepared to take on this responsibility, which means, yes, yet another battle. It ended up being yet another Dragon Dance Dragonite sweep, but that doesn't mean she isn't a formidable trainer. This made her realize that if one person can stop the war, it's definitely going to be me. With those encouraging words, I head straight into that dark cave where we have an encounter with our other friend Shatter. He'll determine if we're ready to become champion, because if we're not, he's going to do it himself. So we put our best effort forward and use Machamp to clean up Tyranitar, Scizor, and Garchomp. Alakazam is too much to handle, so I swap out into Tyranitar to take care of it. Sceptile is then up against my Dragonite, which is also an easy win, and while his final Pokemon Excadrill was able to take down 2 of my team members, Machamp's Mach Punch was just too fast, which meant the victory once again went to me. But Shatter says he isn't done yet. He needs to find one person to settle his score, and then he'll be back with the strength to beat me. Let's hope he can find that person, but we're not going to worry about that now because we're about to take on the league itself. And we see that there's a small change, as Will has been changed around with the other Psychic-type user, Sabrina. Not that that matters too much anyway. She does start off with a Gardevoir, which is an easy pickings for my Metagross. Her Slowbro is trying to be scary by setting up Calm Minds, but we have a Tyranitar in the back that does not care about that. Her Jinx dies to a single Meteor Mash. Her own Metagross is no problem either, as my Raichu can Thunderbolt it, and then I send Metagross back out to deal with the final 2 Pokemon, Alakazam and Mew, like they're absolutely nothing. Now let's see if Bruno and his fighting types are any harder. He does start off with a Lucario that's pretty scary, but my Machamp's muscles are way stronger. I use a Drain Punch and a Mach Punch to force out Conkeldurr and then Entei. Once Entei hits the field, I bring in Dragonite and start setting up Roosts and Dragon Dances. Once I'm strong enough, the rest of his team members are all one-shotted by Outrage, making this a very easy battle so that we can move on to the 3rd member, Karen, and her Dark types. Machamp comes in clutch yet again by taking down Weavile, but Honchkrow is something he can't handle. So I tried to deal with it by using Raichu, but that didn't work either, as she decides to swap it to Tyranitar. That's when I bring in Metagross, make easy work of it. He then also deals with Honchkrow, and Houndoom goes down after I set up 2 Dragon Dances with Dragonite yet again and use Waterfall. Greninja just takes 1 Outrage too, but his final Pokemon, the mythical Darkrai, is too strong. Our attack might have seriously damaged it, but that was not enough. But we still had a priority Bullet Punch with Metagross that could seal the deal, so we get sent to the next chamber where we're eye to eye to a trainer we've never seen before. His name is Adam and he's a Pokemon training prodigy. However, we don't learn much from him as he's not one for giving big speeches, so let's just get straight into the battle. He leads off with the mythical Pokemon Genesect that immediately boosts his own special attack, making him incredibly strong, even capable of taking down my four-armed beast. Greninja then uses his speed to deliver the final blow, but Aegislash is coming in and that's way too strong. So Dragonite uses yet another Dragon Dance to power up and take down the Sword and Shield. I also land a devastating blow on Gyarados, but it isn't quite enough and my dragon gets put in the ground. But because the Leviathan only has a small bit of HP left, Metagross can bullet punch it and take down the incoming fatty Snorlax with Meteor Mash. The legendary electric bird Zapdos falls to 2 Zen Headbutts and a bullet punch, but the final Pokemon Latios is too much, at least for my Metagross, but I still have Tyranitar in the back who with its crunches wins us the battle. Now there's one more opponent we need to face, a man of great magnitude that has helped us out on many occasions, but now it's time to show that the student can become the master. So let's go all out against Lance. The battle does start off pretty good for me as we can take down Salamence with Meteor Mash and Bullet Punch from Metagross and do decent damage on the incoming Garchomp too before biting the dust. Machamp then smacks him against the pavement, all while doing some decent damage against the incoming Dragonite who has now set up some Dragon Dances too. I'm not too scared however because we still have Greninja in the back with his Icy Wind who can send this and the next Dragonite into the Ice Age. A third one was too much for my frog though, so I sent out Godzilla instead, used a Dragon Dance and killed it with Rock Slide. Our final adversary was a Rayquaza, the god of the skies, but that green snake stood no chance after I dropped some rocks on his head and hit it with yet another outrage of Dragonite, crowning me champion of both the Johto and Kanto region. And our flame that we just sparked up is going to bring so much hope to the people in this world. Professor Oak and Elm also joined the celebration party by saying that they've never seen such raw talent before, except for the legendary Pokemon trainer named Red who hasn't been seen for years. After all of the festivities, we get put into the Hall of Fame and make the decision to travel back to our hometown. That's where I get called into Professor Elm's lab for an emergency meeting. He has a special SS ticket for me so we can travel to the Kanto region and check out what's going on there in case they need some defense. But when I try to get out of the lab to fulfill my responsibility as champion, I get stopped by my father who comes rushing in. He doesn't want to let me go and tries to gaslight me by saying he's going to bring the family back together, but that isn't going to work because he was the one that left in the first place to try and make this world better, and we're just trying to achieve that dream for him. But he doesn't trust my battling abilities and thinks we're going to die on that battlefield. So I try to change his mind with a Pokemon battle, and surprisingly enough, he has an incredibly weak team of around level 40s, so he stood absolutely no chance and witnessed my power as I overwhelmed him. That's when he realizes that champions are a different breed. He had no idea we had become this strong. He now knows we're not helpless and even gives me his blessing to use my powers for good. With that concluded, we give our mom and him a last hug and seal the 7 seas to arrive in Vermilion City. Since the invasion hasn't started yet, the Kanto region is still sort of normal, so the only thing we have left to do now is take on every single gym leader. So that's what I do. I go and grab the Thunder Badge from Lieutenant Surge, which was quite easy. Then I moved on to Saffron City, but I couldn't take on the next gym leader yet because my boy Shatter was here. He apologizes for being so rude and stealing Pokemon back in Johto, and even gave every single one of them the chance to leave him. And some of them ended up doing so he feels very vulnerable and at his weakest point. So we need to reassure him that he still has some fight left in that body and shouldn't give up on becoming a great trainer. So we sweep through his team with Dragonite and see that his Sceptile did indeed leave him. After the battle, we learn that he's here to find his father, who's supposed to be somewhere in the city. So we wish him luck in finding him and then separate. That's when I challenge the local gym leader Will to grab his Marsh Badge, but as you may know, Saffron City is also famous for its fighting type dojo, which has now been replaced with a brand new gym that unfortunately doesn't give out a badge. And we learn that it's being led by Shatter's father Giovanni, the previous leader of Team Rocket. But he's left that life behind and is here to learn new trainers some very good advice. But if you want it, you do need to beat him in a battle. So that's what I did. And this is how. I start off by putting his cat in a chokehold with Machamp. I knock his Staraptor down with Metagross's Meteor Mash. After this, Machamp throws his bull out of the gym, Dragonite uses his rage to dismantle Porygon Z, Metagross smashes his legendary Regigigas back to the temple where he belongs, and Raichu electrocutes all the fat out of his Snorlax. He then tells us some very good advice.
That life is no competition but a negotiation. Those who go the furthest are not always the most talented. Rather, it is those who are best at inspiring others.
After that battle, we're all pumped up, so I waste no time and head through Mount Moon and reach Pewter City. Here we find out that the entire museum is closed off because some kind of experiment went wrong in there, and people can only go in there if they've defeated Brock and gotten his permission to check it out. So I go to his gym to crush all of his rocks and return to the museum. We see that the entire place is dark and abandoned, so we use Flash to light it up and run into some weird Pokemon called Ditto. They are spread through the entire place, but if you ignore them and head straight to the back of the museum, you would see a very strong looking Pokemon. Its name is Deoxys, and it seems to be an alien of some kind. Unfortunately, even if you beat it up or try to capture it, it will never go away, so I guess the museum is going to stay closed for the foreseeable future. There's nothing left here for us, so I decide to make a quick stop by our old friend Professor Oak in Pallet Town. But it seems like Crystal had the same idea as we end up running into her. She's really been enjoying Kanto and doesn't want it to be destroyed because the invasion could start any day now. So you know the usual routine by now. We end up fighting, I beat her, she runs away after saying we got really strong, and then we can check out Professor Oak. He was looking mighty fine and really encourages me to try and challenge his nephew Blue, the final gym leader of Kanto. And if we somehow beat him, we have to come back here for a special reward. So I go looking for him on Cinnabar Island, which has totally been destroyed by a volcano eruption. So I go up to him, tell him that I'm the champion, but he doesn't seem too amused by that. He thinks the title champion has lost all of its meaning because they're now just puppets of the government, and if we want to prove him wrong, we're going to have to get every other gym badge and then go to his gym to prepare for the war. And because I don't want to disappoint him, I head to Blaine's cave, beat him and his fire types to grab the volcano badge, and we do the same with Jasmine in Fuchsia City. Now that we have the soul badge, we make a quick trip all the way to Celadon City to burn down Erica and all of her plants so we can acquire the rainbow badge. But the second to last gym leader was Misty, who was missing at this moment in time. But we did hear about a problem at the local power plants, so we went over there to see if we could help out. We learned that somebody came in here and stole a machine part, so the entire Kanto region is basically without electricity. The only thing they know about the culprit is that he was wearing a black outfit and that he fled somewhere near Cerulean City. So I start investigating the place and find the culprit inside the local gym. He immediately recognizes me as the one who dismantled Team Rocket back in Johto, so this must be La Primera, the strongest of all Team Rocket grunts, who's supposed to continue their schemes and plans here in the Kanto region. So we follow him around until we reach him at Nugget Bridge, where we learn that he is on the same mission as the Johto Rockets. He's heading out to the Kanto radio tower to broadcast the same signal to try and take down the Hoenn Pokemon. But he's also in search of Mewtwo, which if he managed to find it can be used as a second secret weapon. But we're not going to let him do any of that because I send out my Metagross and crack his oyster. And we do the same to Blastoise's shell, Pinsir's claws, and the teapot from Poltegeist. Aerodactyl gets knocked to the ground by a waterfall from Dragonite, and Tyranitar deals with his Genesect after dropping some rocks on his head. With that, La Primera is defeated and he finally gives in because nobody else in Team Rocket is going to help him anymore. The entire team is disbanded, and so his dreams are crushed. But don't worry, we're still going to save Kanto from that Hoenn invasion after we deliver the part back to the power plant. Once that's done and dusted, I interrupt Misty's smooching session for a battle so we can add the Cascade badge to our collection. This brings us up to 15 badges, which means we can go and challenge Blue. But when we arrive at his gym, something terrible happens. A girl comes barging into the door screaming
that it's happening. Hoenn is here. The invasion is about to start. They have overwhelmed Vermilion City and have taken Lieutenant Surge hostage.
So Blue tells me to go there to join the forces of Kanto and try to fight them off while he goes to the Pokemon League to try and get more backup. So I fly over there straight away and get ambushed by some of their captains. They primarily use water-type Pokemon Pokemon, which is what I would have expected of a region that has too much water, but still, that doesn't mean you have to go and claim land from other regions. After taking care of most of them, we eventually reach the gym, but it's already too late. Their mission is accomplished. Wallace has reached Fuchsia City, together with his 4 strongest captains and Admiral Drake. So without a second thought, I fly straight to Fuchsia City and try to enter the Safari Zone, but my mind starts working against me. These people we're up against aren't like Team Rocket. They're actual killers and have even murdered other champions like Steven Stone. And if we fail here, not only will our life be done, but so many others will be ruined. But we've overcome so much already. This is no time to quit. So I charge myself up because we're doing this not only for me, but for everyone we love. So with this newfound assembled courage, I take my first steps into the war zone. Blue was right behind me with some good news. He is talking to so many other champions of other regions, and they've reached a verdict that drops all of their indifferences, which means they're going to come here and help out. But we need to keep Wallace and his goons occupied until they get here. So I battle my way through the terrible wasteland they've left behind, beating up all the captains and even Drake. At the end, there's an open field with just one man standing in front of me. The person that created this whole mess, Wallace. He recognizes me as the new champion of Johto and tries to mock me by saying I'm a young hero that's supposed to save everyone, but in the end, that's not how it's going to be. Because with the power of the legendary trio, he's basically unstoppable. And so he sends out his Groudon to try and end me. Little did he know that I crafted a perfect team that would be capable of handling even the biggest threats. And that's where our clash of the ages starts. I send out my victory bell first and use sleep powder to put the giant to sleep. I was only able to hit 1 solar beam before he woke up though, and a single flare blitz was enough to disintegrate me. So I sent out Greninja to try and flinch him with dark pulses, but apparently this guy cannot be flinched. So that plan didn't work out too well either, but we did do a major amount of damage. That caused the recoil damage from Flare Blitz to take his own life. The God of the Sea, Kyogre, came out next, so I sent out my Dragonite and started spamming Dragon Dance while he was busy setting up Calm Mind. 2 of them was all I needed to bring down the Titan, but he was able to hit an Ice Beam, so the last Pokemon, Rayquaza, the God of the Sky, used his extreme speed to level the playing field. Luckily, he didn't have any more tricks up his sleeve for my Tyranitar. All of his moves were not very effective, and with 2 more Rock Slides, Wallace is brought to his knees. But he says that it's not over yet. He's going to order his soldiers to take out everybody on sight, starting with my hometown, Newbark, but that's when a voice from the sky says
that they are no longer under his command because he has lost their respect.
It's our long-lost hero, Steven Stone, still alive and kicking. But Wallace says that Steven is a traitor because the people of Hoenn do not want his style of leadership as it's weak and pathetic. That's why they dropped him and started following Wallace so that they could spread their word. That's when Cynthia all of a sudden pops up and says that they're only following Wallace because they're afraid of him, not because he's a great leader. But they won't need to fear you any longer because they're putting a stop to him right here and now. And if these 2 champions weren't enough, Leon also shows his face. But he isn't the last backup we get. We also end up seeing Shatter and Crystal by our side, and with all of our powers combined, Wallace finally yields. But even with the 6 of us surrounding him, he still decides to pull out his Rayquaza and fly away, never to be seen again. Because he knows he lost the faith of all of his companions when he lost to the champion of Johto. And that's the story of how we ended the war between Johto and Hoenn and saved the world.